Good morning, everyone. My name is Simon Hamilton. I'm the Chief Executive of Belfast Chamber, and it's my privilege to welcome you all this morning to this, our launch of our Road to Business Recovery survey results. Belfast Chamber prides itself on being the voice of business in Belfast, and so that requires us to listen to our members and take on board what they say. And there's no more crucial a time to do that as we begin to emerge from the pandemic and are edging towards recovery. We've been very, very pleased and privileged to work with Bauer Media NI, the home of Cool FM, downtown country, in developing this Road to Business Recovery survey. And before we hear the results of the survey, I'm just going to hand over to David Tighe, who is the Managing Director of Bauer Media NI, just to say a word of welcome. David.
Thank you, Simon. Good morning, everybody. Hope you can hear me loud and clear. So I'm delighted to be here today to represent Bauer Media Northern Ireland. And like many businesses, we too have had to change and adapt over the last 12 months. We rely 100% on advertising, as do most of the commercial media in this part of the world. And that helps us to pay our staff, conduct initiatives like this, and really make a difference in our community. So I'd like to take this opportunity just to really thank you if you have been, if you are, or you intend to be a partner of ours in the future. We really do appreciate it. We've got just over 70 committed team players at Bauer Media Northern Ireland, and they've really stepped up over the last 12 months. And I think it's a fitting time just to pay tribute to all of those team members who have families probably living around the corner from you that really made a difference over the last year or so, producing over 400 Indigenous hours of content every week and making a difference to everyone in everyday life. Uniquely also, we've got a charity, and that charity really stepped up as well in 2020. It's called Cash for Kids, and it raised a significant amount of money, all of which went back to local communities here in Northern Ireland. And just if I can, Simon, just want to draw everyone's attention to Cash for Kids Day. That's on the air this Friday, where 100% of all the funds raised on the day go straight back out to the children of Northern Ireland, this year specifically affected by poverty. So I urge you, if you can, to tune in and help make a difference to people on your doorstep. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank Ulster Bank for their support of our day this coming Friday. It's greatly appreciated. So we're close to our audiences here in Northern Ireland, and over 700,000 of them every week tune in. Patrick, who you'll hear from in a minute, and his team spend much of their time trying to understand trends, insights, and getting into the detail of what people really think and how they operate. So I was really delighted to support this piece of research with Belfast Chamber, and I'm pleased that Dr. Lisa Wilson could join us to give her expert analysis on what the data is really telling us. And finally, without breaking too much exclusive information that's about to come up, one of the words that shines through for me in this research is resilience. And Bauer Media Northern Ireland owns Downtown Radio, Northern Ireland's first commercial radio station. That's been resilient here since 1976. And Cool FM growing since 1990. So resilience is a really, really important word, and it's something that really shines through. And I believe that Belfast has this resilience in bucket loads. And this is the moment where I think that resilience is going to be tested even further from what I see. But I think businesses here are up for it. And finally, I'm delighted to offer one of the businesses here a £3,000 Bauer NI advertising package. Yes, that's right. There's prizes on offer here this morning. That will include production. It's to be used by the end of the year. And really, it's a great opportunity to help our listeners to become your customers. So I'll reveal that winner in good quiz show format at the very end of this morning. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the information. And we're really pleased to be a part of it. Simon.
David, thank you very much for that, and we look forward to hearing from you again later on, and particularly in terms of who has won that prize draw. And can I thank yourself and the team for all that you have done in the past year. I mean, the various stations have become a bit of a go-to for many people in terms of getting information and analysing what has been happening and how various decisions taken by the executive and the government have affected us all. And I know that you have taken a huge interest in the city and the wider region's business community, and your own Business Bites show has been a real help in that regard. So thank you for everything that you and the team have been doing. David mentioned Dr. Lisa Wilson, Senior Economist at the Nevin Economic Research Institute. She will be joining us later as well to help us to get in underneath the hood and analyse the results. So without any further delay, I want to, we're going to now hear from Patrick Beattie, who is the Head of Insights at Bauer Media NI, about what the survey revealed in terms of the attitudes and views of businesses in Belfast in terms of the road to business recovery.
Hello, my name's Patrick Beattie, Head of Insight at Bauer Media NI, the home of Cool FM, Downtown and Downtown Country. I'd like to thank you for taking time from your busy schedule to join us today, and I hope you find the next 15 minutes of research as interesting as we did. By way of scope to our research, as businesses begin to emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic, we wanted to gain insights into the attitudes and perceptions of Belfast Chamber members and Bauer Media customers towards the road to business recovery and the key priorities required for the future. To achieve our objectives, we surveyed 212 businesses online with 30 in-depth questions across the last 2 weeks of April. We used 4 research themes, being business sector, government support, business performance, and business prospects for the future. So let's take a look at the business sectors that contributed to our insight. 80% of our 212 businesses were based in Belfast, as you would expect, with 17% of the head offices being based elsewhere in Northern Ireland and 3% further afield from other parts of the UK and Ireland. Just under a sixth of the businesses came from the hospitality, retail and professional services sector, respectively. We then had a cluster of 10% respectively coming from the media, technology and construction sectors, 6% from banking and finance, and a 3% representation from manufacturing, charities and the arts. So as you would expect, a very complementary sector spread to the Belfast Chamber membership and Bauer NI customers. So progressing to the number of people our businesses employ. Over a quarter of businesses we surveyed had 4 or less employees. A fifth of the businesses employed 20 to 49 employees, whilst around 15% employed 5 to 9, 10 to 19, or 50 to 99 respectively, with 5% employing 100 to 249, and 8% with over 250 staff. Well over half of the businesses operated from offices, 14% from shops, 8% cafes, restaurants or hotels, and 7% from tourism or leisure facilities. Factories and warehousing accounted for circa 3%, whilst a total of 13% was accounted for by other facilities, such as working from home, transportation hubs, theatres, or mobile locations. The second of our 4 themes revolved around perceptions towards government support. Looking forward to the early stages of recovery, based on the top 3 needs of businesses, and there were particularly loud callings for further rate support and longer-term reforms at 51%. 47% seeking more grant support for affected sectors and businesses. 46% requesting more marketing and advertising campaigns for the city. And a cluster of 33% looking for infrastructure improvements, events to drive footfall, and skills development support. Another quarter requesting an extension to the furlough scheme. Interestingly, only 8% were looking for longer Sunday opening hours. There was a strong performance from Boris Johnson's government. They're showing here being twice as favourable as the Northern Ireland executives at 49% versus 23%. So relatively speaking, the UK government was rated as doing a good job by half the respondents, compared to only 1 in 5 saying the same about the NI executive. A third of the businesses saw Belfast City Council performance as good, and half as neither good nor bad. So the perception here being Belfast Council have done a sound job. You will be pleased to learn great confidence prevailed around Belfast Chamber, with 2/3 of businesses saying they had done a good job and 1/3 saying the performance is neither good nor bad. When it came to government and NI executive support, a very significant 70% of respondents availed of the job retention furlough scheme. Over 1/3 of businesses availed of government-backed loans, and almost 40% availed of NI executive grant support. For example, localised restriction support schemes and the COVID restriction support scheme. Just under 1/5 did not avail of any government support, with 8% claiming self-employed income support. When it came to creating a greener city, somewhat surprisingly perhaps, there was the divided opinion over private car access to Belfast city centre, with a marginal 55% agreeing that measures should be introduced to make it more difficult for private cars to enter through Belfast city centre. And on to our third theme of business performance. Here we look at the financial and operational performance of our businesses. When it came to redundancies, encouragingly, 70% of our businesses did not need to make any, while 60% again do not expect their businesses to make redundancies in the next 6 months. 5% will, however. That said, a cautious third remain unsure about future redundancies. So we are probably over the worst on the redundancy front, with redundancies already largely happening, with fewer to come than feared. However, there is a sense of nervousness expressed between now and the end of the year. The other issue emerging is what happens post-furlough against a change of market consumption patterns. When exploring additional debt due to the pandemic, just under half managed without incurring any. More worryingly was the half that had taken on debt, and in particular, the 15% of businesses whose debt has doubled during the period. The question arising here is, will indebtedness become an issue hampering growth and recovery? It may do, coupled with the ability of the smaller businesses to sustain higher and longer periods of debt than before. Maybe something for the panel to discuss later on here. Whilst just under a half of businesses are operating online, the pandemic definitely stimulated an additional third to start selling online. Perhaps this will help smaller independent retailers to level the playing field with Amazon and Co. The future remains optimistic enough for our bricks and mortar outlets. However, the offering and consumer experience will need to continue to be really, really good. Again, 2/3 of our businesses said digitization and use of technology has significantly accelerated as a result of the pandemic. Now to the interesting scenario of the future of home working versus conventional office space. Half of businesses expect to operate on a hybrid model. Indeed, there's still a significant proportion of businesses who intend returning to the office to work on a full-time basis. Moving forward to the future of office space, and half the businesses stated they will require the same amount of office space. 10% said they will actually require more, with 1 in 5 planning on reducing their office space. So perhaps the office is not dead after all, with very few planning to work from home 100% of the time, half favouring a hybrid model, and more than half needing the same amount of office space or more. This ought to be encouraging for the hospitality and retail businesses who service these offices. Half our businesses effectively said it would take over a year to get back to the same trading levels. Broken out, 29% of the businesses stated it would take up to 2 years to recover from the financial effects of the pandemic, whilst 23% said it would take in excess of 2 years. There's no doubt the pandemic has left a deep scar across the business community. From what our respondents are saying, this is going to be a long tail recovery, perhaps more of a tick shape than V shape. But I shall let our economist, Dr. Lisa Wilson, explain the finer details of that in a moment. Looking at the extent Brexit and NI protocol has impacted on our supply chain and the accessibility of products from GB, 2/3 stated these had a moderate or minimal effect. This perhaps indicating the priority has been about managing the pandemic rather than Brexit and NI protocol. That said, Brexit hasn't gone away. The top 3 challenges for business recovery very much remain around public health and its effect upon footfall, with 54% having public health concerns, 52% concerned with the continued restrictions around queuing and limitations upon customer numbers. This in turn leading to a decrease in footfall, which is represented by a figure of 35%. A third of businesses are also concerned about the effect of Brexit and the withdrawal of government support funding and, of course, debt. Interestingly, only 16% are concerned about the threat from online retailers, perhaps showing a confidence in their product offerings and experiences. The biggest boosts to the Belfast economy by far are the opportunities from major public realm improvements in streets like Royal Avenue and more city centre living, followed by investment in the roads network and improved public transport provision. Opportunity is also seen for more open and green spaces, better walking and cycling infrastructure, plus greater connectivity to and across the River Lagan. So now we've arrived at our final theme, business prospects. Taking all things into consideration, high levels of optimism remain at 45% within the companies themselves. However, this diminishes when cross-referenced against their respective industries at 33% and the Belfast economy as a whole at 26%. So maybe businesses are confident in the aspects they control and not so confident about those aspects that they cannot. Half our businesses saw an increase in cost inputs during the last 3 months, whilst a third of their costs remained the same. The principal cost input reasons were down to COVID-19, Brexit, NI protocol, and general cost inflation. In terms of managing these input costs, half will be passed on to the customer and half absorbed in the business. Very much a 3-way split emerged, assessing 2021 advertising expenditure, with a third of businesses revising their activity up, a third remaining the same, and a third remaining unchanged. The broadcast media, radio and TV, appears resilient, with around 2/3 of businesses' ad budgets remaining the same. As you would expect, there's growth across digital of 48% and a comparatively challenging future for the press market. So by way of conclusions, amongst other key findings, the survey revealed that despite the pandemic casting a long shadow, optimism is shining through from a city that's been resilient for decades. That optimism very much revolves around the factors we control as businesses. The high uptake of government aid has significantly helped business survival. Brexit still hasn't gone away, and the top challenges for recovery revolve around public health. Half of businesses have taken on additional debt, and we must question if this is sustainable. There's also divided opinion over private car access to Belfast city centre. Thankfully, the office isn't dead, and digital technologies have accelerated the innovation for e-commerce. So customer experience and product offerings are therefore critical going forward for bricks and mortar businesses. The biggest potential boosts to the Belfast economy include major public realm improvements, improved public transport provision, city centre living, and more green spaces. Shorter-term business survival remedies are currently trumping longer-term macroeconomic drivers. Business input and costs have primarily been driven by COVID-19, Brexit, and NI protocol. And as a result, there is a 50-50 cost absorption between customers and businesses. Broadcast and digital media remain resilient, and we saw a strong showing towards businesses from the UK Government and Belfast Chamber. We are now possibly over the worst, and government subsidies have helped significantly. So, against the backdrop of quiet optimism going forward, we see more of a tick than V-shaped portrayal of economic recovery, but it may need boosted by further government help. Whilst we will discuss the priority issues in a moment, the main takeaways for me were the strong showing of the UK's government support, the level of additional debt taken on by businesses, and its sustainability going forward. As a commercial radio advocate, the loud call for advertising and marketing and what we can do to help there. It was reassuring that the office isn't dead, and I suppose ultimately, and yet again, the resilience shown from our city's businesses to overcome adversity and the optimism that shines through. So just before you hear from the rest of the panel, I would like to thank everybody at Belfast Chamber and our customers at Bauer Media. I would also like to thank my colleagues Adele Salvetta, Hannah Kirkpatrick, and our MD David Tye and Commercial Director Simon Mann. I hope you find the last 15 minutes interesting, and thank you for taking the time to listen. That's it from me, and back over to you, Simon. Thank you.
Patrick, thank you for that. Absolutely fascinating, and there's a lot of information there for folk, and I'm sure lots of people will be scribbling down some of those headline results. Don't worry if you didn't get them all. We will share them all afterwards with everybody who has attended today. I'm sure there will be a lot of people as well who will have questions as a result of what has been said. So we will have hopefully a bit of time later on for putting some questions to Lisa and Patrick and David as well. So there's a question and answer function that's available at the bottom of your screen. So if there's anything there that you want to delve into or ask questions about, please put those questions into that Q&A function. We're going to spend a little bit of time now going through that and maybe analysing some of those results and what they might mean for our city's recovery. We're going to do that with the help of Dr. Lisa Wilson, as I mentioned before, Senior Economist at the Nevin Economic Research Institute, and also recently appointed by the Finance Minister to his Fiscal Commission. Lisa, you're very welcome. We're very, very pleased that you're able to join us this morning. So lots and lots of information there. We're going to try our best to get through as many of those kind of key headline points as we possibly can. But overall, what's your sort of big takeaway from those results and what it means for Belfast and the wider region's economy as it starts to edge towards recovery?
Yeah, so thanks very much for inviting me along this morning. It was a really interesting survey, and I think the survey was actually carried out at a really good time when you're kind of in between that stage of kind of emerging from lockdown, but we're not the full way there. And I think as Patrick kind of picked up through his presentation there, the cautious optimism, I think, is the main takeaway that I take from the various different results and the various different themes. So the optimism and the positivity is shining through there, and you can see the real fight from businesses to get back to business and re-emerge from the pandemic. But that cautiousness is still there, which I suppose we've learned to become over since the start of the pandemic, because nobody expected it to last this long. So I think people and businesses are generally hesitant to kind of be overly optimistic now because of where we found ourselves before and kind of like just after Christmas, whatever. So there's that cautiousness there that's hopefully if the vaccine rollout continues to be so as successful as it is, and no new variants and such start coming into play, the things I think for Belfast are looking pretty good, and businesses are certainly, you know, willing to pick up the fight there.
And one of the big, and I suppose it adds into that feeling of cautious optimism. One of the big sort of takeaways for me is around whenever businesses were asked about what sort of help that they needed to get themselves, you know, towards and through recovery. Lots of different options were put, some of them quite kind of traditional sort of macroeconomic enablers like skills development, like investment in infrastructure, which we all know that at a wider economy level really does add to productivity and can drive an economy forward in the longer term. But yet what comes out very clearly in the survey is 51% of businesses said that they wanted further rate support and I suppose longer term reform. And that's an interesting area to perhaps explore as well with your fiscal commission sort of hat on, in terms of, you know, whether the suitability of the current rate system as a local taxation scheme. And then also just you know, slightly behind in terms of popularity was 47% of businesses wanting further grant support. And clearly, you know, the government has and the executive have spent a lot of money, which will obviously have to be paid back at some stage. Quite how, we're not so sure, but you know, there does seem to be a degree of sort of wanting to hold on to that very direct, very sort of substantial support as a bit of a crutch almost to get through the next period. You know, whilst there is lots of hope and lots of optimism there, it just seems to be a need to sort of hold on to that additional support. Is that something that you noticed as well?
Yeah, so as I was going through kind of the various different options and in the results, and you know, if traditionally, you know, 2-3 years ago, if you would have been kind of looking at the kind of supports and interventions businesses might have required, or the economy, I suppose more broadly speaking, would have required to grow, from an industrial strategy point of view, you would have been looking at things like skills development or infrastructure, and even like what was interesting and the results, you know, we expended so much energy and debate 2-3 years ago about longer Sunday opening hours, and that featured really low, and the responses from businesses right up there, as you say, Simon, is kind of further rates for support and kind of the longer term reform of that. And I think that's unexpected. I think that is a pressure that has been kind of sitting in the background of conversation about the Northern Ireland economy for some time, and the UK economy for some time, and that kind of need to have discussion, a real in-depth discussion about business rates and longer term reform. I'm not actually sure if the Fiscal Commission is the place to have that broader discussion. I probably think then executive needs to have that discussion, because you need to bring into that discussion things about like online retail and kind of that debate and discussion between kind of the bricks and mortar retail of businesses, for example, versus kind of the challenges faced that they're facing because of online. So I think that's probably a better place to have that debate. But secondly, up there with almost 50% saying more grant support for affected sectors. And that's what I mean about the cautiousness in terms of the responses from businesses there. They're still very much focused on the here and now. They're very much focused on survival and thinking we need to continue to emerge from this. We're looking ahead and we're being positive about the future. And we're optimistic, particularly about the businesses are optimistic about themselves. But that kind of holistic protectiveness of government supports over since the start of the pandemic is really shining through. And I think it would be, given up at the last hurdle of government supports were to stop short now. We've went along the entire way of providing that certainty to businesses, providing them with the support they need. And what we can see is that we're reaping the rewards as we emerge from the pandemic. So I think that certainly grant support and support for those sectors which are still, affected by, restrictions. We still have social distancing in place. We still have, we're still eating outside. There's still various restrictions in terms of how we can go about our lives. So, whilst we are all looking ahead and kind of going, the lockdown is continuing to ease. We have to remember where we're at, and that's what businesses are saying to us. We are still in this place where the here and now of this pandemic is still affecting us. So don't give up on us just yet. Keep holding our hand through this bit, and slowly tailor away the support. I think that's the most sensible thing to do. Otherwise, you're at risk of just having wasted money if you don't hold businesses' hands right through to the end there.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point, and I'm sure it will be a interesting point of discussion in Westminster and Stormont around. You put it very nicely. Don't give up just yet. Keep holding hands as people start to emerge from all of this. And you mentioned about outdoor hospitality and people eating and drinking outside. Having been in the city a few times over the last couple of weeks and seeing people eating and drinking outside in all weathers and all conditions, it's another testimony to the resilience that David talked about earlier. There is a, just maybe related to that, maybe around again a cautious optimism. You know, maybe it emphasizes exactly the point that you were making. Not surprised that in terms of challenges, you know, so we're asking businesses what they saw as challenges for economic recovery. 54% said ongoing public health concerns. 52% still said restrictions being in place for high. And there's lots of talk about whether, you know, mass social distancing will be needed here even in the next number of weeks, never mind the next number of months. But, you know, again, is that emphasize that point that you're making, that just, you know, it's not, we may have kind of moved in our minds that we're into recovery, we're moving on, we were trying to be optimistic, we're trying to look at the future, but, you know, there is still this kind of period in between where it's not business as usual for lots of those respondents to the survey.
Yeah, and that's something even for, you know, within the NERI, we're trying to organise hopefully an in-person event September, October, November. Kind of, we're still kind of very cautious about when we'll be able to have it in person. But then you're thinking about different venues, and you're going, do we need to allow for social distancing? And then you just think about, you know, businesses have to make these decisions, you know, about next week or, you know, in 2 weeks' time, and it's constantly changing for them. So that kind of difficulty you can see, you know, coming through in the results, some of the things that they're faced with, you know, so rather them than me.
Another one, and that is, you know, interesting getting your thoughts on is there is a feeling that there is a bit of a sort of a long tail. I think Patrick talked about this as well, that whilst we are moving hopefully into far better position economically and in every sense, health-wise as well, this will have a long tail. There is the legacy of this pandemic will be quite lengthy, and one of those is in respect of debt potentially. So there's more than half have taken on additional debt. I think it's around 15% have more than doubled. I know, you know, there are perhaps questions about, well, have you the ability to service that debt and the impact of that? But that does raise concerns around how sustainable that debt is. 25% of respondents said that debt was their biggest challenge moving forward. Is that a worry? Something that needs to be kept an eye on, and you know, maybe needs to just be something that we're all quite mindful of, particularly policymakers and decision makers at Stormont and elsewhere need to keep an eye on?
I think we definitely need to keep an eye on it, particularly who has taken on the most debt. Where are those businesses located in terms of our economy? I think that will probably be the thing that becomes ultimately more important. But optimistically, I looked at the results and I thought 70% of firms have actually taken on up to 20% additional debt. And you know, I think if you would have turned around to businesses last April, whenever they were forced to shut down, and said, you know, in 15 months, you will still be in business, you will have weathered the storm, you will have a bit more debt, but you will have made it through, I think they would have banked on it and went with it, because that's, you know, that would be a pretty, you know, good place to be. So I think it's not as worrying as what I might have expected from seeing some of the results there. But that's testament, and I think this is, you know, the results that we're seeing in terms of the UK government kind of coming out as having performed well, that's testament to the government supports, both via business supports, but also via the job retention scheme, and being able to hold in place so well both the living standards of workers and their connection to their employer, but also businesses. So, you know, they're in a slightly worse place than what they were, but I think, you know, all things considered, the results in terms of debt are actually encouraging. But yeah, we should definitely keep an eye on who the businesses are which have taken on huge amounts of debt, and as you say, the serviceability of that.
Yeah, you mentioned the maybe not call it popularity of the government. That's maybe the wrong way to characterize it, but you know, the fact that the majority of people thought that the government were doing a good job. I'm going to resist temptation of offering a commentary on why the executives was so low. But you mentioned one of the reasons, without the successful vaccine rollout is a contributor in that. But you mentioned the job retention scheme, the furlough scheme, and 70% of respondents said that they had availed of that. So that's a huge, huge number when you think of the number of jobs, the amount of money that would have cost. What do you make of the findings around jobs? Because 70% of respondents said that they had already let people go and made redundancies within their business, but there was a degree of sort of uncertainty around what the future might hold. They were asked about employment levels in 6 months' time and whether they thought they might have to let people go. Only 5% were certain that they were going to have to let more people go, and there was a big block. I think about a third said they were unsure. Does that suggest we're over maybe the worst of it in terms of a jobs crisis, or is there still a lot of uncertainty and just people not sure? And again, it adds into all of those factors that we've just been talking around about, that we are moving in the right direction. It feels like we're moving in the right direction, but there's still a lot to work through.
I think there's still the uncertainty there. So whenever I was looking at the results around redundancies, I was matching it up then from the results which we get from our labour market report on a monthly basis. So the fact that 30% of businesses said they've made redundancies as a result of the impact of COVID. Again, it's a good place to be, because again, what you're seeing there is the impact of the job retention scheme and protected businesses. But still, there's that fallout. Close to a third have been making redundancies, and kind of that, I suppose, links into the debt question, I think. Whereas I think many businesses, the businesses that were, you know, that couldn't see it through, that just weren't going to be viable over that amount of time, that's where those redundancies are. The job retention scheme has protected, I think, the rest of those. The kind of looking forward and anticipating redundancies in the future, 5% saying yes, they're definitely going to make redundancies, and about a third not sure. Probably my analysis from looking and kind of following the labour market report over time, I think that's probably not as optimistic as I would be. I don't think, or you know, that uncertainty is as big. If you look at the trend of redundancies, it has been doing quite well over the past few months. We had that huge increase, but it's kind of been tapering off. So I think that not sure will fall away more into the nose, kind of not making redundancies over the next while. But again, you're kind of looking at this in terms of, you know, it depends how. Well, we don't know an awful lot because things are only starting to ease. We don't know an awful lot about how consumption patterns have changed. We only know from talking to people that people are dying to go out and do things and socialise and mix and spend money and do things that they have been constrained from being able to do. So, and then business or consumer surveys and stuff are saying similar things. So my expectation is that we're easing out of lockdown at a good time. We're coming into summer, and I think a combination of those things will actually do our economy a good turn. But the uncertainty is still there. But I think I'm more optimistic about kind of not needing more redundancies into the future.
Yeah. Maybe turn to just touch on a couple of answers around the city itself, physical aspects of the city. So the office has been, we ran an event Belfast Chamber ran an event a couple of weeks ago looking at the future of work and what it might mean for offices. And there's a lot of new office development still ongoing in the city. And the conclusion of that event was that the office wasn't dead, and there was a degree of hope in that it wasn't dead. Not a huge amount of data coming in behind that, although there was lots of. We did note that the demise of the office has been predicted quite a number of times down through the years. So a couple of very pertinent questions asked around office and future work. There's clearly a majority of businesses who use offices saying that they will operate some sort of hybrid model, probably still to be determined what the balance of that is. Very few, as Patrick noted, saying that they will work entirely remotely moving forward. But then it's sort of an interesting question. It's almost, one interpretation might contradict that, where it's around 70% when you take out for those who it's not applicable, and it's over 70% say that they will need the same amount of office space or actually will require more office space. So whilst flexibility and hybrid and remote working, whatever people want to call it, seems to be becoming more of a fixture, the office floor plate is not going to, what businesses require doesn't appear to be shrinking to the degree that we might have thought had we been having this conversation a year ago. So the office is dead. Patrick's conclusion is the office is dead. Is that a fair conclusion, you think, on those results?
The results are actually interesting whenever you're looking at in terms of kind of the, how you're going to operate in the future, and the majority, I suppose, saying that they're going to operate the hybrid model. And as you say, then, so that would mean ultimately, there's going to be some staff in some days, and, some days of the week and working from home the rest of the week. That to me, whenever then I looked at the next question, it was saying, we're going to need the same amount of office space. And I was like, well, businesses aren't clearly planning of operating a hot desk model where, myself and my colleague kind of arrange kind of a desk share. I suppose, I'm going to be in the office Monday and Tuesday, I'll have the desk that day, and my colleague would have it the rest of the week, or vice versa, and kind of having a rota that way. That to me was my concern kind of a few months ago about, reduced office spaces requirement, because, I couldn't see the business logic of kind of why would you keep the same amount of office space going forward if you're going to have less people there. It's just not an efficient use of resources, I suppose. I think what kind of, when you stand back from these two questions, what it's actually telling you is that we're not actually all that sure yet. So coming into the next couple of months, I think we will be operating a hybrid model with staff working from home and kind of working in the office. And into the future, I don't think we really know. I think businesses are saying they're going to operate a hybrid model because of things like social distancing still being required. So, having to operate a hybrid model. But I think there's a bit of coyness and shyness from both the employers and the employees to ultimately say, hold their hands up and say where in the future they're ultimately going to be. I seen a survey actually published in America yesterday saying that 70% of businesses are going to allow a hybrid model, but they're going to have to be in the office for at least 20 hours a week. So they're I think a bit further ahead. So there's definition starting to come to that, starting to take shape a little bit. Here, I think there's still a bit of coyness of between employees and employers. Employees are dying to get back into the office at the minute because they want to get back in and mix in and socialise and then around the city. But they don't want, I think, to go, right, I'm coming back into the office full time, because they're afraid of what they're actually giving up. And I think employers are the same. They want people, they want their workers back into the office. They want vibrant offices again. They want colleagues working together. But they don't want to say, get back into the office, because, the pandemic's over now, because we're still not at that place. So I think actually these results are telling of a coyness and an unsureness about kind of how the future office will work.
It's being coy and shy is not something we're well known for in this part of the world, but I think that's a good point. There's a huge amount of flexibility and around the discussion on flexible working still. And then just final point, and just to remind anybody if any questions you want me to put to Lisa or Patrick, please put them into the Q&A function and bring in Patrick for his thoughts on what Lisa said in a moment. But just finally then, there's maybe related to that point. So the figures around numbers around e-commerce and digitalization are quite interesting. You know, there has been clearly about half of businesses were already operating online. So there's nearly 2/3 then have actually embraced e-commerce and are starting to sell online. And you know, there's similar sort of numbers around the advancement of digitization within businesses. Then when we asked, and we've seen then retail opening in the last couple of weeks, we've seen big queues, very interestingly, a very young demographic coming into the city. Those who are most internet savvy are actually coming in to physically shop, which again seems a little incongruous. But when we asked businesses what did they think were the most important, you know, what would provide the biggest boost to the Belfast economy, it's things around the fabric of the city that come up on top. Major public realm improvements and some of those great streets, making them great streets again, more city centre living. And there's a reasonable, what's this little further down the pecking order, there's still good solid support for public transport, more open and green space, walking, cycling infrastructure. You know, so there's that sort of reimagining of the city, making it a place which is a lot more than just canyons of offices or just, you know, for retail purely. That's coming through as well. And what are your thoughts on that?
I think those results were excellent to see, and even as you say, walking around Belfast recently, it's brilliant to see people back into the city and walking around and taking part. So I think what the pandemic has actually shown us or taught us is that despite where we live, we can actually do a lot of things outdoors. And I think people have really embraced outdoors, and they want them Belfast to embrace with them and kind of make those improvements alongside them and kind of allow that kind of social space and public realms for them to be able to mix. I whenever kind of seen the results or seen the kind of shops reopen and kind of, you know, comments and stuff online about, you know, who was standing in the Primark line, you know, I thought it was brilliant to see. I thought it was brilliant to see queues back at shops. It shows, I think, to retail and retailers that bricks and mortar retail is not gone. And it touches back to what I was saying earlier, is that experiences have become, experiential retail was already before the pandemic becoming something that was, you know, an emergent kind of pressure on retailers to kind of give consumers something that they can experience whenever they come to your store. I think the pandemic has really pushed that, and kind of because now people are dying to go out places and kind of dying to go out shopping. You know, you're standing, walking through Victoria Square, you're seeing kind of young people taking pictures outside of, you know, particular shops or whatever, because they're there for the experience of it. And whilst the online is there, you know, it can't take away, I think, from the physical presence of a store. And I've been saying this for some years now about retail, and kind of the risk of physical presence of stores kind of being taken away because of that pressure to move online and because of the costs of running a physical bricks and mortar store. Is that I really hope that retailers don't make the move too quickly, because actually I think with time the presence of a physical store will actually shine through, and I think that's what we're seeing with the queues. People like going places and doing things and going shopping. So online's really important, obviously, and you know, we're seeing that in the results, but as is the kind of the reopening and the queues just show us that, and the busyness of Belfast at the minute is showing us that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there are optimistic signs that it's clearly retail has been massively challenged in the last year. I think that those figures showing that people embracing online is maybe starting to level the playing field a little bit as well. There's interesting activity in lettings on the retail side in the city as well, and you know, I think that coupled and allied with that rates issue, and if there's longer term reform that is beneficial to the retail sector and the hospitality sector, then that, you know, we might see that playing field a lot more even than it has been in recent times, and a bit of a rebalancing back in favour of physical retail. And certainly, I confess to having missed it dearly over the last number of months, and may have appeared in one of those queues from time to time. So, Lisa, thank you very much. We've had a couple of questions have come in. One from Richard Ross asking about contingency planning for a scenario for visitor numbers coming in from elsewhere in Northern Ireland, GB, ROI over the summer. I know that there's a lot of work going on, Richard, with Visit Belfast and others in terms of marketing the city, and obviously some restrictions are still in place around movement of people, and hopefully that will change in a minute, because what I can say is that businesses, whether they're retail or hospitality or leisure and tourism, are looking for visitors to come in and are adjusting their premises safely in order to accommodate lots of people. John Keane from Ardmore has asked about more consumers have embraced e-commerce, and the need for the city and its retailers to offer more than just products for sale is clear, and the desire for those experiences, Lisa, that you're touching about is touched on, it's coming through, and he's asking about coordinating and making a meaningful difference for the whole city. And I think that is something in terms of responding, Lisa, that we do need to that sort of team Belfast and coming together and trying to make all of some of those physical changes that we're talking about are not the domain of business. They're much more public sector, but there is that need for people to come together to drive up those experiences, make this a better place to live, and more city centre living is one of those key asks. More better place to live and work and enjoy leisure time is going to require a much more coordinated approach, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Kind of linking through, even you see it yourself, or if you're out experiencing Belfast, you see the various different things that you might want to do to be able to connect, even to connect the hospitality and the retail sector a little bit. I think there's a good job of work to do from there. I think our discussion today about hospitality and retail over the past number of years is one taken away from the other. People go out to restaurants now, they don't go shopping, but I think actually one can hold the hand of the other, and I think how we can kind of connect those experiences, actually there's real opportunity there. And then, as you say, how the public sector can kind of go in and help that kind of embrace and happen.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much again for your time and looking through that and giving us your expert analysis. We really appreciate it. Just going to go back to Patrick. Patrick, any final thoughts from you in terms of being very grateful for you and the team for helping to carry out this research. There's 30 questions in this survey. It has probably bagged another 300 questions in terms of its results. Anything that Lisa has said, or anything that you wanted to add before we go back to David for that all-important reveal of the prize draw winner?
Yeah, no, I mean, I see a very comprehensive overview of the analysis, really. I really like the office debate. I think right now offices are about having a sanctuary, perhaps. Going forward, is it an office first environment, or is it a virtual first environment? And I think the business leaders need to decide that. I think, again, Lisa touched on the debt. Significant amount of the respondents were very small businesses. Going forward, do they have the ability to sustain that debt going forward as well? I think, like any surveys and good ones, I suppose there are more rabbit holes about each of those various themes and questions as well that we can go down, which is fantastic by way of further exploration. But I think in terms of where we started from and where we finished, it's been a really worthwhile exercise. When we look forward to developing those themes and the answers to those questions more. I think John Keane raises a very good point in terms of, we're looking for actions to take out of this. I think that's a very poignant one that John raises as well, and is good to put near the top of the list of development there as well. So yeah, no, very, very comprehensive, very pleased with the engagement, and look forward to the future with optimism as well, really. Simon.
Thank you, Patrick. David, just going to come back to you then to wrap up. Any final thoughts from you? And if you could, we're all in suspense, waiting for the to hear the name of the winner of the £3,000 prize, and can again thank you on behalf of Belfast Chamber for putting that prize forward, and we're really, really grateful that you did that. So any final thoughts and the big winner, please?
Yep. Well, I suppose I would say this, wouldn't I? But I was really interested to hear that broadcast remains resilient. And actually, if you think there's some interesting sort of dynamics there, where online has become, in some ways, it's taken off, as the survey shows. But in other ways, what we've learned over the last 12 months is that people now have a higher sense of community, higher sense of place, and actually local media delivers that in bucket loads. And I think it's really interesting to see that kind of contrast between the online shopping experiences going through the roof and the e-commerce, but actually broadcast media remaining resilient. And I think that really does come down to, it's people like you and me talking about things that you and me know about. And it's not this cold kind of, personality devoid space called the internet. So that's the bit that really stuck with me. But anyway, you didn't really want to know that. You wanted to know who the prize was going to go to. And the draw has been independently verified, so I've been told. And the winner is, I'm very pleased to say, Ian Wilson, who's the Chief Executive of the Grand Opera House. So Ian, you will get a £3,000 Bauer Northern Ireland advertising campaign. I think it's quite fitting, considering one of those areas that really has been hit over the last 12 months has been the arts. So we're absolutely delighted to send that in your direction. And I hope that everybody books the tickets for Goldilocks and the Three Bears at Christmas.
David, thank you very much. David, I think I agree with you. I don't think there could be a more perfect or apt winner, given the difficulties that that sector has, and indeed some uncertainty still about when it can reopen. So well done to Ian and the team at Grand Opera House for winning that prize. And it just leaves it then to me, with the time available, to just time that's left to us, just to once again thank David and Patrick and the team at Bauer Media NI for all of their help and assistance in making not just this survey, but also this event today possible. The insights that we have gained from this are incredibly useful, and will be used by us at Belfast Chamber to do exactly what John King mentioned in his question about trying to coordinate and work with others to deliver on some of those needs that businesses in Belfast and right across our region are looking for. So thank you to everybody as well for taking part in the survey. We couldn't have done it without you. Just again, thank you to the Bar for helping to bring all of that together. Thank you to Lisa for helping to analyse that and picking out some of those trends and themes and bringing those to life for us. And I also thank Neil and the team and the events for helping this morning to go really, really smoothly. Can I also just maybe take the opportunity to highlight a couple of events that Belfast Chamber are running? We have one this Friday morning at 10 o'clock in partnership with OpenReach. We're looking at the importance of digital connectivity towards economic recovery. So very much building on that theme that we're moving and emerging from the pandemic and moving hopefully towards better times economically. And next Friday then, 21st, is the third in our Re-Energising Belfast series, delivered in partnership with Carson McDowell, and that's looking at the Belfast's waterfront area, harbour area, as a destination to live and work and enjoy leisure time. So go to our website, belfastchamber.com, and register for those events. You'll be very, very welcome at them. So once again, thank you to Patrick, thank you to David, thank you to Lisa for their time this morning and for making this such a thoroughly enjoyable event. Thank you, everybody, and look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.